coursework. We're going to go ahead and jump into lesson 8 and lesson 9 of our book. Reason for that is lesson 1 and lesson 2 opened up on HTML. So you got a brief overview of the programming languages we're going to be using to create websites. Yes, we're going to go ahead and start using HTML, and therefore lesson 8 and lesson 9 go off and you know, teaches you a little bit more about what you can do with HTML. Now, CSS and JavaScripts are completely different languages, but they're used in conjunction to make the web pages more interactive. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go touch in on some of the attributes and some of the information that I wish for you guys to absorb. Now, some of the lessons and some of the exercises in the book are not required as part of the coursework for a grade, but they do help you at least grab concept and uh, at least get a clearer picture of the information that's being portrayed in these lessons. So we're gonna go ahead and jump right into lesson 8, working on colors, images, and multimedia, and chapter 9 in just a bit. So mhm. Basically, what chapter 8 is helping you guys obtain is um, the palette of colors you can use for text, for blocks, and for divs, for any parts of the layouts of your web page. It is imperative that you get grasp the knowledge of using colors in your, of course, using the sample here, figure 8.1 is just um, it's a picture of the worst website. And you might want to ask yourself why it is one of the worst websites. And it's because of the color schemes are not very appealing or very usable when you're looking at it. If from far away, everything just looks jarbled. You have to really be paying attention to exactly what the information is being portrayed. And we don't want that into your being expressed in your web pages. So be very peculiar about the color schemes you're trying to use, those type of fonts as well. Make sure whatever you're trying to create in your websites, make sure it's visible and has lots of contrast. Therefore, like I said, working with these colors is just not okay. You want to be artistic and be uh, going off and show off your skills by um, adding in so many attributes and different color schemes and stuff like that when in essence you need for it to still be functional and also be mindful of those readers that have ADA that also needs to be ADA compliant in the end. I'll let you guys know a little bit of about what ADA is and what ADA does. You have to keep in mind of all those factors for people that have disabilities and in reading and make sure that your website is perfectly legible. All right, let's go ahead and continue. Hexadecimals. Hexadecimals are your color palettes. So when you're searching for a color and you want to um, using hexadecimal, basically is any and colors in the spectrum. You give it values. So you can give it red values, green values, blue values, and of course brightness and other uh, values to it to make a particular color anywhere along the spectrum. All right. So using this tag, this right here, body style, is you're selecting the whole body and anything in it to have a background color of etc. So F000000 is white, and then the color it you can use this and use it. It's actually like a lavender bluish. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So um, this one right here is using these values for red, red, blue, blue, and green, green. Okay, so it gets you those values from the hexadecimal, and that's what you're going to be using to allocate colors in your attributes. Maybe a font, or maybe a background in a div or layout and header section, etc. You'll find out more ways than one be able to use colors in your web pages. All right. As I mentioned before, yes, you can use colors just about anything in your in your web page, whether it's a font, like you mentioned here. We use coding on the back end using HTML, and also or you can use also CSS to um, create. There you go. This will be our back end. Our back end uses a little bit of CSS and our border colors, and we picked out oranges. There we go. All right, and the reason I stalled just for a bit is because we're using here in our listing 8.1. It's a little confusing because they're actually using CSS. What we're going to be asking for you guys to do is use inline HTML styles. I took a little bit of note from an external source called W3 Schools. This is a very popular tool if you want to learn, ins and outs of HTML, any and all other coding um, programming. Very useful tool. So in here in our HTML styles, the way I've would have wanted for you guys to learn HTML is using HTML inline styles. Therefore, um, when you're creating your attributes, you're using as part of the HTML in the HTML tag. Our book is showing you guys how to do it in CSS, which is perfectly fine. If you grasp the concept or you're already familiar with the programming language and CSS cascading style sheets, all the better. But for these you guys just learning about the HTML attributes and adding HTML styles to your fonts and your text and your your backgrounds, this is a more relevant information that I need for you guys to just be in tune to. So when we're using, for instance, we're using styling on our text. So we can use an inline style by choosing its background color and changing it into any color. And so therefore it'll allow you, that's not good. Okay. Too many windows open. There we go. So using inline styles in HTML will allow you to quickly and within your very same script in HTML to add those attributes. So once again, if you have any issues or you want to elaborate more on the styling using HTML, you can go into W3 Schools and that'll give you just a brief rundown of what you need to learn in order to do this week's assignment, which is basically just adding attributes to fonts and texts. Okay. Later on, we'll jump into CSS, which is cascading style sheets. It's a completely different animal, but it works very well using HTML when you ever want to have more than one attributes of the same thing in multiple areas. You can designate and have a CSS style set in your CSS script, and then you call it back and use that anywhere along the sheets just by calling out the name of the attribute that you want to change or the style. All right, so let's go forth here at chapter 8. All right, another very big item here that I want you guys to look into is the creation of tables. Creation of tables using table. It's your opening tag to create a table. Now to create a table row You also use an opening tag. Now you want to create several cells within that row is using table data. Table data, we have two separate columns in our table row using table data tag. Make sure you have your opening and closing tag where it should be. The reason is because if you have this one along here, you're only going to create one column versus two columns if you have it underneath your second table data tags. Very, very picky, yes. And you can tell right away if you need for it to show up on the front end. Load up the document like you saw in the htdocs, and you can also make changes to this. And as soon as you hit save on the bottom right, you should be able to refresh your cache and view it on the front end. Okay. Going back to the book. Okay. Graphics, images. We're going to be using a lot of images in our web pages for the simple fact that it provides a visual on top of it makes it eye-catching. So you're using text. You also want to use related topic images to go along, just to be captivating, a little bit of eye-catching, and of course it'll be easier for people that have a little bit harder uh, understanding the topic. Using an image that's fairly related to the topic is very, very helpful. Another one of the things that you might want to start keeping in mind is your your file sizes and your images. So there's a couple of programs out there. One is GIMP that will allow you to manipulate images. I like to use our snipping tool to obtain images and make sure that they're not copywritten or etc. I like to create some images in PowerPoint, some images um, in Photoshop, etc. We can export those and use a cropping tool such as GIMP. There's also ones called Fastone Resizer that'll allow you to resize a picture and make sure that's not overbearing in your layouts. What I mean by that is if you have a picture with a very high resolution, it's going to be very large in size, and unless you have any restrictions on the sizing, if you want to portray it, then it's just going to automatically pop up and invade the layout. So you have to be very careful with that. So, and this very fairly explains a little bit more of how to use GIMP and setting your image size is very important, like just mentioned before. Now there's overlays that you can also include on there. I'm not gonna be big on having you guys use heavily edited pictures for your project. Sorry, for your assignment. For a week two assignment, I'm not very big on having you guys do heavy editing. A mild image, a personal image from your phone camera, uh, works along very well. So you guys can upload one of those and add it to your image. Mhm. Okay, so now we have a sample of exactly what I was requiring for the second part of your lab assignment, or which is the lab assignment. We've included some text here. We've also included an image. An image, we're going to be sourcing it out. Um, this is going to be very important. On the video itself, I will create a separate video just so you can have the instructions on how to successfully upload an image into htdocs. And by what I mean by that is, okay, I'll give you a brief rundown. So whenever you're adding an image to your image files, you must include that image file also in the htdocs. Therefore, it is very important for you all to create an images folder in your htdocs. And in your images folder, I would ask you guys to create a title or rename it to something that's going to be relevant to what you're going to use it for. For instance, I would not, I would suggest not having a label of, like, for instance, image.jpg as as your image file name, because you can use this for, I mean, you won't be able to know exactly what it is, but unless you create a name such as hard PNG, I have a relative idea of what it is that I'm going to be using, so I can use that in my coding. So very important. And I simply went into my file manager and htdocs. I created a new folder. I uploaded the image that I'm going to be using for my week 2 assignment. And not only that, but I would have to properly name that item in my week2.html. And I'll show you guys very briefly exactly what I need for you guys to do. And I'm going to have to possibly do this on a separate video as well. Make sure that you all are aware of how to successfully upload it and successfully call it out. All right. So here is very important. You might want to have to pause this video to get to where you can absolutely read this exactly what I'm talking about. Very important. Every forward slash means that it's residing within a folder. In your URL, your first slash is your htdocs folder. I've asked you guys to create a second folder called images. So this is exactly what we're calling it. First forward slash, then our folder. And then within that folder, we're going to have you guys pop up anything that's in there. And more specifically, whatever you named your image is where you're going to recall on your coding. So for instance here, forward slash image.image.jpg is going to call out specifically the image called image.jpg inside the images folder inside the htdocs under your domain URL. Very important. And I know it's a little confusing, a little tricky, but like I said, pause this video if you need to successfully rename your image once you upload it into your images files. Make sure you're not having any spaces. Make sure you have your forward slash, not backslashes, forward slashes, and make sure that the file extension also corresponds. There's PNG, there's GIF, there's all other types of formats you may be able to use that, but it has to be very specific. Otherwise, you'll have an error, or you'll just have a simple little, a block X that's stating that your file was not successfully retrieved when you code. All right, let's go back to the book. So basically, everything else within the chapter 8 will revolve around how to um, either use images in your divs and how to either put them in float and padding and all that kind of stuff. Um, all that will become useful in due time. But first, foremost, yes, learn how to upload those images. This is not very okay. The quiz will also reflect directly off of the book. All right. Chapter 9, Lesson 9. This is where I was going to talk about um, padding and floats, aligning, and your margins. Um, very basic concept in HTML and CSS. So very easy. You can use inline styles to create your margins within your web page. I'm not very big on asking for you guys to demonstrate this on your assignment, because a lot of this is also in CSS. But if you're going back to producing inline HTML styles, um, then I would suggest using W3 Schools to help you along with that. Uh, I'm not requiring any of this specifically. There's some items that have the same concept of what you've learned in Chapter 8, and just using those margins and using those um, the spacings and alignments be very uh, useful. And this is just to enhance the viewing using the float properties. Okay. So this chapter was very, very, very brief and using these properties. We may have to revisit this on a later date just for you guys to start getting um, more knowledge on how to apply these very same styles in your project. So that was it, basically, chapter 8 and chapter 9. Okay. And I'm going to pause this video so that I can go in directly back to the uploading of the images again, so you guys can have a separate video on how to upload images on your HDDocs and be able to view those on your assignment for week lab 2.